Shining Stars. Welcome to my channel, Shining Star Soup. It's time for another What's the Soup Saturday, where I talk all about my experience working as a registry clerk in Alberta. Now, I have been out of registries for about a couple of years at least, and I'm just going to walk you through what my journey was, starting with the one at the very beginning. Now, I worked at a payday loan lending place when I had saw an ad for Alberta Registries. And the nice thing about Alberta Registries was that there was a lot of more opportunity to grow, and the payday loan company that I was working for was closing down. It eventually went bankrupt. Anyway, so when I had gone into the interview, I was interviewed by two people, and they had told me how registries was a very steep learning curve. There was a lot to learn. The particular registry that I was first hired at was a registry that was open. They had a different kind of schedule where you worked 4 10-hour days. You got 3 days off during the week, and these weekly shifts would switch out. I'm actually going to close the window because there's a neighbor making a lot of noise in the back, so you're gonna see a cut in the video so soon. So I was hired, and my manager told me that the reason why I was hired, even though I had no experience in registries, was because I was very compassionate about leaving my manager, who I was very close to, making sure that she had a lot of notice, and it was pretty much they liked my, I guess, empathy, but that's why, and my work ethic, because I had been at this payday loan place for a year, and the only reason why I was leaving was because of the business going to be shutting down really quickly. I was hired with one other girl, and they put us right into a 10-hour shift. And in that 10-hour shift, you only got 1 half-hour break. So it was a lot to take in, especially to have a 10-hour shift right from the get-go. I heard from a couple of past coworkers that they changed that for new hires. But anyway, the second day I showed up to work, but the lady that I was with didn't. So she gave up after the first day. She was like, hell no, this isn't for me. And I was trained about like 2 months of training, and the one lady that was training me, she would go on smoke breaks and she would take me with her because I wasn't on the floor. I was on the computer, and my manager at the time told her that that wasn't allowed anymore. She did not understand why, but she was kind of a hired contractor. She was hired outside of the company to come in and train new registry agents. And I remember having to be on the computer for several hours a day getting all my certification. And it was hard to be on a computer for just 10 hours a day reading and doing quizzes and getting certificates. That was my first week. And for about 3 months afterwards, all of the work that I was doing would have to have been signed off. And I had to go to the manager, have her go through the work, making the customer waiting at my counter very agitated, because sometimes they would be waiting for 15 minutes just so that I could eventually get the manager to look over the work. And while I did enjoy pretty much it was a city, so there was a lot of interesting clients, very fast paced, very long days. I drove about 40 minutes a day. Actually more like an hour a day, half hour there, half hour back, because it was in the city and I lived in Spruce Grove. But I was there for a good over a year. I was there, and I eventually decided to leave. And I mean, there were a lot of good points that I did like about the first registry office that I worked at. The 3 days a week off, and how it worked was sometimes every 2 months you'd get a full 5 days off. It was just the way the schedule worked out. Everybody had rotating shifts, and you'd end up getting 5 days a week off. That was nice. And I mean, it was like 40 hours a week in 4 days. So it was a full-time job. I liked that there was a little bit more freedom. I had my eyebrow pierced and I was able to, I miss having an eyebrow piercing, to be honest. I really miss it. A job had ended up in the registries coming up in the city where I worked in. And they were going to offer me the same 50 cents more than what I was making in the city. So I did end up quitting, and I'm not mentioning business names just for privacy's sake. So I ended up going to the Spruce Grove Registries. Now that started off good, and I was there for a good 2 years. The only problem was the assistant manager and me butted heads a lot. We just didn't click, and the nice thing about working in Spruce Grove was that there were hour lunches, just 8-hour days. So it was a nice change from the 10-hour days, and I went from only having a half-hour lunch to an hour lunch. And it was very, very close. It was like a 10-minute walk from home. So I spent a lot of my lunch hours driving home and then walking back to work and then eventually walking home. I did get a lot more exercise. I had a couple of customers end up leaving me gift cards. One was, I think, to Starbucks, and the other one was to Subway, because they were just that impressed with me. I had a really bad performance review 3 months after 3 months after the big review where they were doing all the raises, and it was a performance review that was based off of a negative customer interaction, where I 100% don't believe that I was 100% at fault, but because the assistant manager played favorites and her and I really didn't see eye to eye half the time, I think it's because I went and kissed her ass. 3 months later, they call me in and they tell me that they're letting me go. And when I asked, well, why? I've been here for 2 years. Why are you letting me go now? And this was 2 weeks before raises were due. This was 2 weeks before the quarter change kind of thing. The timing seemed very shady. And when I first walked into that manager's office, the manager says, well, you know why. And I was like, are you trying to tell me because of the poor performance review 3 months ago that I'm being let go? And she's like, I don't have to tell you anything. And I was like, okay, well, fine. And I mean, what was I going to do? So that was that. The only thing I really enjoyed was I did get along with my coworkers, and a lot of the coworkers did think it was unfair what happened, and they think it was because of that assistant manager having a personal grudge against me. She wanted to get me out of there for a long time, but they had no reason, so finally they were just like, we'll just make it up, right? And that's how that went. I think it was unjust the way things went down, but I can't go back and do anything about it. Alright, so that was the second registry office that I worked at. The third one was kind of another one in the city, a different one in the city. And that one was the worst possible experience I have ever had working at a registry's. During my interview, the owner of that particular registry told me that, warned me about the supervisor, that the supervisor had made a lot of girls quit, but that she wouldn't fire her for the world. And I didn't think that any supervisor could be that bad, but this woman was batshit crazy. And she would go as far, I was only there for about 3 weeks, and she would go as far as, it was a totally new system than what I was used to. It was an archaic system that they used there. They had seven workers at one time and 6 chairs. So one person was always left out, and there was always people fighting over chairs when they went on their lunches. And I was told by a coworker never to use the chair that was in front of the supervisor's desk. Well, this one particular day, the supervisor was off, not in the front, not using the chair, so I grabbed the chair and I sat on it. The moment the supervisor looked over and saw that I was on the chair, she came over, told me to get out of the chair, moved the chair to the side of the wall, and left me there to stand for the rest of the shift. it was freaking ridiculous. And anytime, like, I wasn't catching on to a new system as quickly as I had thought I was going to. Oh, wait, she knows. And she would belittle me in front of the customers. She'd belittle me in front of the staff. And I got so stressed out that I had a stress-induced panic attack to the point where I was at work, I was shaking, I couldn't drive. I had to get my husband to leave his work, and I ended up having to go to the hospital because this supervisor and the environment was just toxic. So, like, a day after I came out of the hospital, I quit. I was like, I don't need this. My health is more important, and this lady is a white cow. Like, I could not see spending another day working with or for this lady. All right, so that one in the city was done. I'm on number 4. 1, 2, yeah, for number 4. Number 4 was not in Spruce Grove, but in the next town over. And that one, basically, I wasn't there for that long. And the reason why I left, I actually quit that one, was too much drama. And a manager that I felt not only played favorites, but also bent the rules just to make the registry there itself look good. Like, give the government misinformation or lie to the government about certain things so that our numbers on these reports that everybody in the registry saw would look better. But there was just too much drama there and too much favoritism, and it was starting to weigh on me. And it was when I got to that registries that I realized that I don't really think this is for me anymore. The only thing is that I had the training and I had the experience and I had the certification. It was the only place, and it was decent money. It was good money. It was like I was making $18 an hour when I worked in registries. $18.50, I believe. So I quit the one in Stony, and I had decided to go back to the one in the city, my very first one, the first registry that I worked at. Nothing much had changed there, except when I was hired, they told me that I would only be temporary. They weren't planning on keeping me around for more than 3 months. It was just going to be a temporary position because they needed extra help over the summer. I was like, well, that was fine. And the only thing that really changed was that on those 10-hour days, you got a 45-minute lunch instead of a half hour, which actually made a huge difference. But you had to take that 45 minutes all at once. You couldn't break it up into like a 10-minute smoke break, that kind of thing. I had been there for about 2 weeks, and I remember thinking, it's like, I went there, I don't want to be in registries anymore. I don't like the people. I hated my job, and I realized coming to work and dreading it every time. Didn't matter if I was in Stony, didn't matter if I was in Spruce Grove, or being treated like shit. Either way, I just wanted to get out, and that's what I did. I got out, and I'm not interested. It's been 2 years since I've been in registries, and I am not interested in going back. I have a lot of knowledge, and I suppose if worse comes to worse, but I don't even think I'd rather work at a fast food restaurant making $3 less an hour than have to go through the stress of being back in registries. Alright, so thank you, everybody. That was my What's the Soup for Saturday. I hope all of you are staying healthy and staying safe and keeping shining stars, even if I'm not around as much to remind you. Bye!